What do you love? I love trees. Not only in the tree-hugging kind of way, more like in the, whoa, look at those trees, man, kind of way. I love to walk amongst them, I love to climb them, and I love to draw them. When you tell somebody, I love trees, they say, oh yeah? What's your favorite kind of tree? That question kills me because how are we possibly supposed to decide that? It's like asking, what's your favorite kind of ice cream? Which we all already know the answer to. Yes. I love all kinds of trees. I love manzanita trees for their weird human arm-like trunks and slick red bark. And I love bristlecone pines because of their twisted and ancient bodies, kind of like my great-grandma Mildred. Sorry, Grandma. Not sorry. And I love giant sequoias because they're just so, well, giant, aren't they? They're the world's largest living thing by volume. The largest on record is over 300 feet tall and 17 feet wide. Wow. And I look up at these monsters of nature, and I just think, how'd you get to be so big? Seriously, how do they start? Well, I looked it up, and they start just like any other tree, with sprinkling of magic pixie fairy dust and unicorn poop fertilizer. Just like great-grandma Mildred. That's not true. That's really weird. Actually, they start small, as sequoia seeds that fall from the pine cones that come from other giant sequoias. Isn't that amazing? These tiny, almost microscopic things grow into the largest living thing on the planet. Wow. And isn't that how nature works? You give something room to breathe and the right circumstances, and they just do what they're born to do, grow. My work starts small too, with micro ink pens, drawing in my sketchbook on location in wild places. My sequoia seed is a single line drawn on paper. This one's 4 millimeters wide by an 1/8 inch long, even smaller than a sequoia seed. But I know what you're thinking. It doesn't stop there. No, when I add another line, and another line, and another line, and a billion other lines, those single lines grow into something greater than themselves. This is my drawing of Half Dome in Yosemite National Park, one of my favorite places on the planet, and home to hundreds of giant sequoias. One of my favorite things to do is to go on location to some fantastic, beautiful place like Yosemite and draw this great cliff or mountain from afar, and then go the next day and climb to the top of it. And there's not many better places to do that than in Yosemite National Park. Now, it'd be a lot easier for me to work solely in my studio where there's good lighting and great air conditioning and Wi-Fi. But I prefer to immerse myself in my subject matter, to go on location and work in reality rather than theory. So every couple weeks, I leave home and go on some sort of journey or adventure that starts small, with a question. I find that all my best adventures start with a good question. Questions like this one. What would it be like to travel to southern Venezuela, to the Grand Sabana, and climb to the top of a 2,000-foot wall called Acopan Tepuy? That's a real word. Not only that, but to climb to the top via a route that's never been climbed before. Well, I know the answer to that question now. And the answer is, it's freaking hot! And it's humid, and there's a lot of bugs and snakes and scorpions, and it's uncomfortable and miserable. That's the answer. And the answer is, in the end, it wasn't really about the climbing at all. It was about the Pomone people that live in the village beneath the climb. It was about coming down from the summit and understanding their struggles with illegal gold miners in the area, introducing mercury into the waterways and poisoning the river. It was about coming as rock climbers, but delivering solar power for their emergency CB radio system. It was about using art as a means of communication and engagement. And it was about this guy, Leonardo, the chieftain of the village of Yanek. Leonardo's parents started this village 70 years ago. They started small, just the two of them. This village has now grown to over 80 people, and they are thriving and surviving in the savannah, despite all their challenges. Our question didn't assume any knowledge of the answer. The next question I asked was, where can I find more mosquitoes, more humidity, more snakes, and more misery? That's not the real question. The real question is, what can art bring to the Javari region in the Amazon? A couple of years ago, my good friend Celine Cousteau invited me on a journey hundreds of miles down the river to visit tribes that are experiencing an onslaught of hepatitis A, B, and C, malaria, and Delta as a result of 8 decades of outsiders' invasions. Celine has been invited by these tribal groups to come and tell their story via a documentary film project. Now, this is complex because I don't know if you've noticed, but Celine and I are outsiders in the Amazon, and outsiders in most of the places we frequent, to be honest. But as these tribal groups are losing more and more of their population, they're looking for any way for their voice to be heard, not only to the Brazilian government, but to the outside world. Now, my role on this expedition was to create art on location, to engage with the children in the villages, and to create opportunities for communication without verbal language. The first night, in the first village we stayed in, as I lay there in my hammock, swatting at mosquitoes again and other winged demons, a woman in the village died of hepatitis right then. And I knew immediately there's a purpose for our being here. We're artists. We cannot impact an immediate change for these people, but we can start small with one film, one photo, one drawing at a time. This is Make, an elder in his Métis village. Métis are often referred to as the jaguar people, known for their reverence for the great animal by showing it with their facial piercings and tattoos. This is Lucia, a mother of 4 in a Marubo village. Her facial marks indicate her fertility. And this is Dionasia, a grandmother and the second wife to the chieftain in the village of Boa Vista. The answer to our question, what can art bring, was a platform for their voice to be heard outside of their world. Celine has been asking questions in the Amazon since she was 9 years old, on her first journey down the river with her grandfather. Maybe you've heard of him, Jacques Cousteau. Celine has returned again and again over the last 30 years, asking questions and seeking answers for the people of the Javari. Her many small actions are adding up to a huge impact. Now, the most recent question I've asked, and maybe you did too, was, what does Nepal look like after the earthquake of April 2015? I wanted to know, after the dust settled, both literally and figuratively, what does this country look like now? And what can art possibly bring to people who've lost everything? So 6 months later, I journeyed to Kathmandu, on to Pokhara, and into the Gorkha district, which is the epicenter of the 7.9 magnitude earthquake, where thousands of people lost their lives. and entire villages were destroyed. I wanted to work in reality, not theory. So our journey started with a 2.5-day trek into the Annapurna Mountains to a point at 13,000 feet just beneath Mount Machu Picchu. Now I'm used to sitting in the mountains for hours, sometimes days at a time, swatting the mosquitoes and creating art. But on this trip, I wanted to change my perspective a little bit. So instead of just drawing on my way up the mountain or drawing the mountain from afar, I decided, what would it be like to draw while flying off the top of the mountain? That makes tons of sense. So this is a 45-minute flight, piloted by my buddy Nick Grease, the guy sitting under me. Now, I looked it up, and Nick is a world-class paraglide pilot. Don't worry, Mom. But he's also the president of a nonprofit called the Cloud-Based Foundation. The Cloud-Based Foundation seeks to benefit communities where paragliding is popular. After our flight, we hopped into the truck and headed into the remote and rugged Gorka district. In the truck with us was Jamie and Isabella Messenger. They're also world-class pilots and guides who happened to be in the area when the earthquake hit. Now, unlike you and me, sane people, for some reason, Jamie and Isabella didn't run from the earthquake. They ran to the earthquake, straight to the center of the disaster. They started small to see what they could do to help, to aid in recovery and support. Over the course of the next 56 days, Jamie and Isabella made their way up the valley, doing what they could, connecting NGOs and media and communities and bringing them together. Eventually, the world knew about Baproc and Laproc and all the other villages, and help was on its way. Now, our journey followed their original journey up the valley. We were able to bring some simple things that were needed for the winter, some blankets and hats and coats, but we also brought coloring books to the children, designed specifically for them to unpack and understand this tragic experience they'd had. The schools in the villages were being rebuilt with a corrugated metal. As we pulled into the village, we thought, man, they look a lot like prisons. And maybe you're one of those people who think, yeah, I think all schools look like prisons, man. Wait till you go to Laproc. Some of the teachers would tell us that these students are afraid to come to school. They're worried another earthquake's going to hit and they're going to be trapped inside these schools forever, away from their families. So we initiated what we called beautification projects at these schools, painting on the sides of the metal with the students, creating a more beautiful and hopeful place to return to. Now, our journey up the 60-mile canyon was amazing and inspirational, and we saw so many exciting and interesting things. But one of the most impactful things I saw were these strong Nepali women carrying stones and lumber and baskets on their heads, rebuilding their homes as they worked their way up the sides of the mountain. This influenced the final mural I did in the village of Laproc, which was our high point and end point of our journey. I wanted to celebrate these strong and amazing Nepali women by showing them rebuilding not only their lives and their villages, but their entire country, one stone at a time. They started small, just like a sequoia seed, or just like Celine and Make in the Amazon, or Leonardo and his family in the Grand Sabana, or just like Jamie and Isabella working their way up the valley, or maybe just like, I don't know, you and me, where we live. We can start small. There's nothing wrong with starting small. Lots of huge things did, right? You tell me, hey man, I want to start my own business, or I want to write a book. Great, start small. Or I've got this thing burning inside of me, and it's risky, and it's dangerous, but it might change the world for somebody. Start small. Or you say, hey man, I heard what you said, and I want to plant my very own seed in my backyard and grow my very own giant sequoia, just like great-grandma Mildred. I'm going to use magic pixie fairy dust and unicorn poop fertilizer. No, that's weird. I made that up. But if you're going to do it, you should probably start small. I would advise that. Listen, we're all trying to figure out our purpose on this planet, right? We're all trying to understand our vision and our relevance. And I get it, it's hard. It took me a long time too. But I think I figured out something that might help. When you're up against something huge, start small. Thank you.